All right, Bears fans, buckle up because the week is starting with some real buzz out of Chicago. Jack Sanborn is officially gone heading to Dallas to suit up for the Cowboys, and the Bears are now left with a critical question. Who's going to fill that void in the linebacker room? There's one name that's starting to float to the surface, free agent linebacker E.J. Speed. And let's be real, the idea is gaining traction for a reason. E.J. Speed has spent the last few seasons with the Indianapolis Colts, and he's become a known presence in the middle of the field. He's not a superstar name, not someone that'll have fans rushing to buy his jersey on day one, but for what the Bears need right now, he checks a lot of boxes. Chicago's run defense in the 2024 season was rough. We're talking near the bottom of the league kind of rough. Ranked 29th in yards per carry allowed and 28th in total rushing yards allowed. That's not going to cut it if you're trying to build a defense that can actually close out games. So what makes Speed a fit? Well beyond 100 plus. Tackle seasons in back-to-back years, there's a key connection that Bears fans shouldn't overlook. Richard Smith, the Bears' new linebackers coach, held the exact same position in Indy during Speed's time there. That means the coaching staff knows him, trusts him, and knows how to get the best out of him. That kind of familiarity matters when you're bringing in a player to potentially take over a key rotational role. Now, let's be clear. Speed isn't being brought in to be the next Roquan Smith. His strength lies in his ability to play downhill plug gaps and be a thumper against the run. He's not an elite coverage linebacker. That's just not his game. But in today's NFL, where most teams spend the majority of their snaps in nickel packages, you don't necessarily need three linebackers who can cover like safeties. You need a guy who can come in on obvious rundowns, set the edge, and stop the bleeding. That's where E.J. Speed can make a difference. Some fans might look at a depth chart and point to guys like A.J. Ogletree, or even younger talents like Noah Sewell, but let's be honest, neither of those players really project as strong LB3 options right now. Ogletree is more of a special teamer, a depth guy, someone who fills out the bottom of the roster. You're not plugging him in as your third linebacker and feeling good about it. Speed, on the other hand, has legitimate starting experience and still has enough juice left in the tank to be effective in a rotational role. And look, it's not just about what he can do on defense. Speed brings special teams value, which is something the Bears desperately need from that third linebacker spot. That's exactly what Sanborn gave this team. Versatility, reliability, and a presence on special teams. Speed fits that mold. He's not going to command a huge salary either, which makes the move even more logical. The Bears can bring him in without blowing up their cap situation. Let him battle in training camp, and if he earns the spot, great. If not, no harm done. Now think about the big picture in the linebacker room. Tremaine Edmunds is still under contract, but if we're being real, his future isn't guaranteed after this season. He's got a big cap hit, and if his performance doesn't match the paycheck, Chicago could look to move on. TJ Edwards is a little more secure, but even he is heading into the final stretch of his deal unless the Bears decide to extend him. That means there's an opportunity here for someone like Speed to come in, carve out a role, and maybe even grow into something bigger if the cards fall right. Looking at Speed's tape, you'll notice he's not the flashiest player, but he's instinctive. He reads plays well, takes good angles to the ball, and doesn't miss a lot of tackles. His coverage is his weakest area, but again, if you're not asking him to drop back 20 times a game that's manageable, the Bears need someone who can give them reliable snaps when teams try to run the ball down their throats. Speed can do that. There's also the urgency of the situation. Linebacker jobs are getting filled across the league. If the Bears want someone with starting experience who can step in right away, the time to act is now. Wait too long, and that pool of available talent dries up fast. Chicago has to be proactive here. But enough about the defense for a second. Let's switch gears and talk about a veteran voice who wants to return. Mercedes Lewis. Now, this one came out of nowhere. Lewis, who's now pushing 40, jumped on the herd with Colin Cowherd and flat out said that his best case scenario would be resigning with the Bears. That's right, a guy who's been in the league longer than some of his teammates have been alive wants to run it back in Chicago. At first glance, it's a little surprising. Lewis has spent the last couple of seasons with a Bears team that, let's face it, hasn't exactly been lighting up the win column. 7-10 one year, 5-12 the next. Plus, there's been a major coaching overhaul. So for a guy like Mercedes, who could probably chase a ring with a contender, to say he wants to come back, that says something. Dig a little deeper though, and it starts to make sense. His tight end coach, Jim Dre, is still on staff. That's someone he clearly respects and enjoys working with. Lewis even mentioned wanting to be around to help Cole Kmet continue to grow and evolve. There's value in having that kind of locker room presence, especially for a position group that still has some developing to do. Now, let's not kid ourselves. Mercedes Lewis isn't coming back to be a top 2 tight end on the depth chart. The Bears already brought in Durham Smythe, who, let's be honest, fills a similar role as a blocking first tight end. Cole Kmet is the clear T1. But after those two, the depth starts to get shaky. Stephen Carlson is more of a practice squad type. And there's definitely room for a 4th tight end, especially if the Bears plan to run more 2 tight end sets under new offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson loves tight ends. Last year in Detroit, his offense was top 3 in the league when it came to using 12 personnel. That's 2 tight ends on the field. That tells you everything you need to know. The Bears could absolutely justify keeping 4 tight ends on the roster, especially if one of them is a trusted veteran who knows how to block, stay in shape, and lead by example. Lewis isn't the fastest guy anymore, and he's never going to be a threat in the passing game again. But what he brings in pass protection and run blocking still matters. Last season, he held up well in pass pro and was serviceable as a run blocker. Not elite, but good enough to get the job done. That's all you need from a guy who's probably only going to be on the field for 15 to 20 snaps a game. So here's where the Bears are at. They could draft a tight end, absolutely. They haven't taken one since Cole Kmet, and it's probably time to start developing someone new. A day 3 guy, 5th or 6th round, someone you can bring in and mold for the future. But that doesn't mean there's no room for Lewis. If you go into the draft with 3 tight ends, Kmet, Smythe, and Carlson, and you add a rookie, there's still room for one more. And Lewis would absolutely have the edge over Carlson in a battle for that 4th spot. There's no need to rush a deal either. Lewis isn't getting scooped up tomorrow. He's going to wait for the right fit. If the Bears want to circle back after the draft and make that call, it's a move that could make sense. Low-risk veteran presence, locker room leadership. All of it checks out. He's not going to change the fate of the season, but he could make life easier for the offense in the trenches and be a valuable mentor to younger players. So, yeah, it's shaping up to be a very interesting offseason in Chicago. Whether it's adding someone like EJ Speed to plug a hole on defense or deciding if Mercedes Lewis deserves one more ride with this squad, the Bears have decisions to make. The roster isn't set, and every move from here on out is about building depth, leadership, and balance. And as we've seen year after year, the teams that get those little decisions right, those are the teams still playing in January. When you start looking at how the Bears are building their roster, you realize just how much every piece matters. It's not just about the flashy additions or the top draft picks. It's about the depth, the experience, and finding those guys who fit. The identity of the team. That's where players like EJ Speed and Mercedes Lewis really come into focus. They're not headline grabbers, but they're the kind of players that winning organizations lean on when the season gets long, injuries pile up, and you need professionals who can step in and do the job without missing a beat. With Speed, what makes the fit even more intriguing is his age and experience. He's not a rookie trying to find his place in the league, and he's not a star demanding a massive contract. He's right in that sweet spot. Experienced enough to know how to contribute, still young enough to play at a high level physically. He's almost 30, which for some positions might raise red flags, but for a rotational linebacker with special teams value, that's still prime territory. He knows what it takes to stay on the field, and more importantly, he understands how to prepare. And let's not overlook how valuable that familiarity with the coaching staff can be. When you already know the terminology, the expectations, and the philosophy of a coach like Richard Smith, you're not walking into camp trying to figure things out. You're hitting the ground running. That gives you a massive edge in a position battle, especially if the Bears end up bringing in another linebacker through the draft or free agency. Speed would already have a leg up, and that could be the difference between making the final 53 or not. It also says a lot that a respected analyst at Bleacher Report links Speed to the Bears. And that's not just throwing a name at the wall. There's logic behind it. The fit makes sense, the timing makes sense, and the need is definitely there. Chicago can't afford to go into the season relying on depth guys who haven't shown they can handle regular snaps. That third linebacker role may not be on the field every down, but when you need it, especially against run-heavy teams, it can be a weakness. Speed helps close that gap. Now bringing it back to the tight end room and the situation with Mercedes Lewis, it's important to recognize that these decisions aren't made in isolation. Everything connects. If the Bears decide to bring Lewis back, that could impact how they approach the draft. Maybe they wait until later rounds to target a tight end knowing they've got a dependable vet already in place. Or maybe they pass on the position entirely and use those picks to shore up other needs like edge rusher or cornerback. There's also the leadership angle. You can't put a number on what a guy like Lewis brings in the locker room. He's been through it all. Winning seasons, losing seasons, coaching changes, playoff runs. He's a stabilizing voice. For a team with a lot of young players, especially on offense, that kind of presence is invaluable. And from what he said in that interview, it's clear he takes that role seriously. He's not just trying to hang around for a paycheck. He wants to be part of something to help guys like Cole Kmet elevate their game and to be a resource for the coaching staff. And it's not like the Bears are overflowing with tight ends right now. Kmet is the #1 guy, no doubt. Smythe is a solid addition, especially in the blocking game. But after that, it's a mix of practice squad guys and unproven talent. Adding Lewis would bring clarity and experience to the group. Plus, if Ben Johnson really wants to implement a system that leans on multiple tight ends, you're going to need reliable bodies. Injuries happen. Depth matters. And Mercedes Lewis, even at 40, is still better than most teams' 3rd or 4th tight end options. Something else to consider is how much value teams can get out of veterans late in the offseason. Sometimes it's not until training camp starts that you really know what you need. Maybe a rookie doesn't develop the way you expected. Maybe someone gets hurt. That's when a guy like Lewis becomes a no-brainer. He doesn't need a ton of reps to get ready. He doesn't need to learn how to be a pro. You sign him, plug him in, and let him do his thing. It's a luxury most teams don't have. The Bears also find themselves in a bit of a transitional phase. The coaching staff is new. The offensive system is changing. The quarterback situation may still be up in the air depending on what happens in the draft. In times like that, having voices of stability becomes even more critical. That's what makes both Lewis and Speed intriguing options. They can be part of the glue that helps hold everything together while the team continues to build and develop its core. And let's not forget how physical the NFC North is. When you're lining up against teams like the Lions and Packers who want to run the football and punch you in the mouth, you need physical players. You need guys who can set the edge plug gaps and win in the trenches. That's exactly what Speed and Lewis bring. It's not flashy, but it's effective. And if you want to win in this division, you have to be able to match that physicality. The Bears have made strides in that direction, but there's still work to be done. Ultimately, it comes down to vision. What kind of team do the Bears want to be? Are they ready to compete now, or are they still laying the foundation? Either way, making smart strategic signings like these shows that they're thinking long-term while still preparing to be competitive. In the short term, it's not about one big move. It's about stacking wins in free agency, in the draft, in the locker room. It's about finding guys who can raise the floor, not just the ceiling. And when you take a step back and look at the roster as a whole, there's real potential. The pieces are coming together. The coaching staff has a clear vision. The defense has leaders like Edmonds and Edwards. And the offense has a chance to take a big step forward with Ben Johnson at the helm. Add in a couple of smart veteran pickups, and suddenly you've got a team that can surprise people. A team that's tougher, deeper, and more prepared to handle the grind of a full NFL season. So don't sleep on these moves. They might not dominate the headlines, but they matter. EJ Speed and Mercedes Lewis might not be the stars of the show, but they could end up playing key roles in shaping what this Bears team becomes in 2025. And that's what good teams do. They find value in the margins, they add experience where it counts, and they make sure that when the season starts, they're not just talented, but ready. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Chicago Bears. And don't be shy, drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. In a stunning development that could reshape the NFC North, the Chicago Bears are reportedly making a strong push to acquire AIDAN Hutchinson from the Detroit Lions. The star defensive end, known for his relentless pass rush and game-changing plays, has been a cornerstone of the Lions defense since being drafted 2nd overall in 2022. However, following a severe leg injury that sidelined him in the 2024 season, speculation has swirled about his future in Detroit, and Chicago appears eager to capitalize on the uncertainty. Sources close to the situation indicate that the Bears front office views Hutchinson as a transformative piece for their defense, aiming to pair him with their young developing core. Despite his injury, Hutchinson remains one of the league's most dominant pass rushers, with an impressive track record that includes an 11.5 sack season and a Pro Bowl selection. Chicago is reportedly willing to offer a significant package, potentially including high draft picks and key defensive assets, to pry him away from their division rivals. The potential move has already sparked debate among analysts and fans alike. Would the Lions be willing to part ways with their defensive star, even after his injury? Could the Bears' aggressive approach signal a shift in power within the NFC North? As negotiations continue behind closed doors, one thing is clear: Chicago is not just looking to compete, they're looking to dominate, and AIDAN Hutchinson could be the key to making that happen. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Chicago Bears, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.